Hello, my beloveds. Welcome to today's Hot Mess Sunday sermon. And my first prayer is that my computer works perfectly. Uh, I had just filmed 9 minutes of another sermon when the camera was working so horribly I had to shut it down, which is probably just as well because I was babbling. And you know what? I might still babble. I am in a deep, deep phase of the clearings that happens with embodiment. So I am in a phase right now of embodying the Divine Mother, and it's making me talk differently. Uh, it's clearing like so much out of me that I don't even know what to say. So this is going to be very different again because I really don't know what to say and I don't know how to narrow down everything I'm going through mentally into words and or just one or two topics. So this may be short, this may be different. I am talking a little differently in the embodiment phase right now. Back in December, when I surrendered to the Divine Mother and was imparted with the Divine Mind, my language changed to holy, sacred words that were sort of foreign to me and sounded a little bit religious. And there was a constant conversation with the divine. Now, as I'm embodying her, I'm finding I'm talking about her less because God doesn't talk about herself. You know, you were embodying her, and so you don't really talk about yourself in the third person. Or is it the first person? I don't know. Who cares? So I'm not talking about the Divine Mother as much. I'm not saying the same thing. So all I can do is share where I am in the embodiment process right now and the processes because I have learned that my path is my path and everyone else has their own path. And I can't teach anybody how to do it my way because I'm not supposed to. If if I'm trying to teach someone something, it's negating the divinity in that person that is guiding them. So one of the identities that is being cleared for me, has been cleared for me, and I talked about it briefly last week, is the teaching, preaching, wise, uplifter, inspirer. Um, I'm just, no, I'm not supposed to do that anymore because everyone's got their own path. But I am going to continue to share because even though everyone has their own divinity in them guiding them and everyone has their own individual path, there are similarities. And hearing the similarities can just maybe give us a little boost on our own path so we know we're not crazy, we're not doing it wrong. So I will continue to share where I am. And right now I'm in deep embodiment, which has just been clearing upon clearing upon clearing. The closest things to me are being cleared. And I talked about this last week with the identity triggers. And there's just even more and more layers. Whatever is nearest and dearest to you, it will be cleared last. Thankfully, I'm in a place where even if it doesn't feel good, I'm able to see the higher part of it and just allow it to happen. Allow it to happen. So, I am just going to share some of the things I have been learning the past couple of weeks. Wherever you are in your journey, it may not look like this, but it could look similar. And you know what? This is an important thing to talk about because there are so many of us watching right now that are healers, teachers, and that sort of thing. And we're going to reach a point where we realize we can't do that anymore and claim our freedom. Okay, this was a huge part of what I had to learn the past couple of days. And again, it goes to our identity. And I'm going to use, and this word came to me a couple of days ago because this is what I was experiencing. If any of you are familiar with the movie Shawshank Redemption, amazing movie. But you remember when Brooks, the older man, was released on parole and he didn't want to go. He was freed, but he didn't want to go. And Red said, it's because he's been institutionalized, you know? And he said, first, it's talking about the prison. These walls are funny. First you hate them, then you get used to them, and then you come to depend on them. That's institutionalized. Also, a learned helplessness. And we have been in a certain paradigm for so long that even if we don't like it, we depend on it because we're used to it and it's familiar. And I've talked about this in different ways before. But I was feeling this feeling of being institutionalized. You know, I am being told, you're free now. You're free. Go. Go. But I had so much wrapped up in my own identity, even my own spiritual identity as a spiritual teacher, spiritual seeker, that I wasn't allowing myself to be free. And so this is important for many of the healers and teachers out there. If what you're doing right now feels good and you know it's what you're supposed to be doing, then keep doing it. There may be a point where you know you can't do it anymore, or you're not actually accepting your parole, your limitlessness, your freedom. And I was told, you're being let out of prison and you can't stay behind to make the other prisoners feel comfortable or to lead them the way to their own freedom. I can't do that anymore. That is not my identity. And staying behind in prison to help other prisoners feel comfortable, to help them lead the way, I am not accepting my freedom. And as I said in the very beginning, it's also negating the divinity that is in each individual that will lead themselves to their own individual freedom. It is so funny that the past couple of months I have been reading books that have been talking about awakened, free people just saying, you know what, I can't teach anymore. I'm leaving this all behind. I don't want to be a guru. I don't want to be a wise one. It's sort of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And then so you just stop leading him. There may be a point where you feel this. It's sort of like you can either save the world or save yourself. You can't do both. But the thing is, you can't save the world unless you save yourself. And when you save yourself, it's not the process of teaching or preaching or healing that saves the world. It is just simply the ripple effect of you claiming your freedom. You as a free human on your own, doing your own thing, will cause more ripples effect of saving the world than focusing on actually physically saving the world. Does that make sense? You have to be it embodiment. You have to embody it, and you can't take anything or anyone with you. But when you do it, that's when the ripple effect, it's like the hundredth monkey thing, you know? When enough people do it, it just becomes automatic. That's the way of the way shower, not actually showing the path, but just becoming the path. And then other people become their own paths. So anyway, that was one of the things I had to learn. I was acting institutionalized. Just like Brooks in the movie, he was an important man. He was the librarian, the wise man. He didn't know who he was out there. So many people will choose to stay in the prison because that is where they get their identity, rather than leap into the unknown and unfamiliar because it's scary. So these are things we're going to have to face at some point in our own individual ways. And the reason it can be frustrating when we're trying to save ourselves and bring others along with us is that people will fight for their limitations. Even we will fight for our limitations. What does that mean? It means that you can tell them of a new reality. They can be even shown a new reality, but they will fight for the limitations. So this, I'm gonna reference the book I talked about last week, The Free Human. And I talked about the happy ending syndrome, how that's one barrier to enlightenment. Another barrier he talks about is the no permission. What does he call it? He just says something about no permission. We don't give ourselves permission. We don't give ourselves permission to believe in something else. To believe there's something else, even if we don't understand it. We don't give ourselves permission to believe in the limitlessness, in the unknown, and things far greater than we can imagine. And it goes back down to being institutionalized and learned helplessness. It is all we know. You know, I can see women in my other work just fighting for the limitation of I'm 47, I'm 50, I will never have a baby. They're fighting for that. That's all they know. Whereas the limitless information that is available right now is saying that age doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, but people will fight for that identity. They will fight for whatever their limitations were because they have an identity wrapped up into it. And even if they don't like it, glitter, it's familiar, so they'll fight for the familiarity. That's being institutionalized. That's learned helplessness. That is learned helplessness. So another thing that has been really rooted into me the past couple of weeks is nothing that we physically can do on the physical plane will have any impact unless it comes from inspired action sparked within from our new consciousness. You know what? One of my friends, my friend Carrie, my dear friend Carrie, sent me a quote in a book she is reading, and I want to read that to all of us right now. And let's see, the book is Catherine Ponder, Millionaires of Genesis. Okay, this is the book, and this is the quote. So, physical. Okay. It talks about physical force being the lowest form of energy, while mental and spiritual forces release the highest form of energy. So just think about that. Anything we're doing in the physical, any action, is the lowest form of energy, while the mental and spiritual forces release the highest form of energy. Once you learn how to release the highest form of energy and power into a situation, the lower, weaker forms of energy do not respond to you anymore. Physical energy is a slowed down vibration that has limited power in the midst of accelerated mental and spiritual vibrations. Physical energy is meant to be a vehicle through which higher powered mental and spiritual energies express. Physical power is not an end in itself. And I can give you an example of this myself. Talking about the identity triggers, oh my gosh. You know, I had a big one come up on Thursday of mother guilt, mother inadequacy, which I thought I'd released it, but no, it came up full force. Like, oh my God, my kids aren't enough. They're not measuring up, which means I'm not enough. And so my first instinct, the human instinct, is to make an action plan. And I knew even as I was doing it that this was not the way to go. But the thing is, that action plan can be so addictive. It's addictive because it's what we know. So what does that mean? Instead of me, this was a huge emotional trigger for me. Huge, that was being released, which I realized an hour later. But before I realized that, you know, the bigger the emotional trigger, the more it blinds you. And, you know, I'm being shown right now, there's this emotional trigger that comes here and it explodes and it blinds you so you can't even see the higher way to go. So here I am feeling this inadequacy, that I'm inadequate and my kids are inadequate. And so I had to go and do all these action plans. So I'm looking up tutors and activities and blah, blah, blah. And really this getting addicted sort of, I'm going to take action, I'm going to control it, I'm going to force it. And I'm like, whoa. An hour later, seriously. An hour later, I'm like, wait a second. This is way too familiar. This is not how you do it. I don't care how addicting it is. That's not how you do it. You don't take an action plan. I had to come back to myself, take a deep breath and say, oh, approaching this all wrong. You have to send yourself first. And then I'm remembering, oh, right. God has perfect expression in these children. God has perfect expression in me. You have to come back to the mental part of it. And I even put a quote on my katestreet.love page on Facebook. Like it if you haven't yet. That said something like, you can never, and this is from A Course in Miracles, you can't take any action to solve a problem. You can only change your thoughts first. So you have to change your thoughts first. So I had to come back to the divine truth and remember, oh, right. And then from there, if action needs to be taken, it would be taken in a spirit-led, inspired way. And very quickly, this goes back to the cleanse I was thinking of doing back in the beginning of June. I knew that, okay, I'm tired of feeling like this, and I'm gonna take control, and I'm just gonna bully it. It was what I'm feeling, and I was getting excited about it because it's addicting. We can control it, we can force it. There is something addictive about having physical control of our environments, even though it doesn't work in any permanent way. And yeah, no, I got all caught up in that. That one took me a little over an hour. I think it took me a day to realize what I was doing. And then I'm like, okay, I understand this addictive hold this is having on me. I'm not supposed to do this. And that's when I took a step back and said, I will not do any cleanse unless there was a spirit-led cleanse given to me. And that's when it was given to me. Very different than what I would have done myself. But this just goes to show we have to first change our thoughts. And this again goes to some of my teachings that I talk about in the Divine Mother activation. How the Divine Mother will rearrange time, space, and physics for us, through us, with us. Things that make no earthly sense can happen with divinity. But it can't happen unless we change it up here first. This is creating the pathway. So when I say people fight for their limitations, they fight for what they know. They fight for the familiar, even if it hurts. And we can't surrender and stay in the limited thinking and think the Divine Mother, God Spirit's going to do it all for us from our limited thinking. And so I have had to step outside of that limited thinking big time, and we will all be asked to do that. It is the affirmations that rewrite the script. The affirmations are the pathway for the Divine Mother to work through us, not for us, through us. So constantly reaching for a higher thought, an expansive thought beyond what we know is what we need to do, and what we're always called to do. What we're always called to do is just reach for a new reality, even one we don't understand, we don't know what it looks like, but it can be mysterious and miraculous, and that's what we have to trust. We have to trust it. So one of the things I have been doing to get the human mind out of it is to use this phrase from the Sophia Code. That's and I can't remember the exact context it's used in, but it ends with beyond my understanding or effort. That is huge. It is huge because when we are stepping away from the familiar prison that keeps us in limits and fear, our mind will still try to apply the old limits to limitlessness, and it doesn't work. The mind will try to grasp and understand so it can control and protect, and it doesn't need to do that anymore. So that key phrase, beyond my human understanding or effort, has been pivotal and key for me to step into this limitlessness. So for instance, if we're dealing with fertility, we could just say, I allow my fertility to be fully restored to its perfection beyond my human understanding or effort. I mean, that is whole and complete as it is, because we're not asking to understand it. We're not asking to have any part of efforting it or forcing it. We're allowing it to be. This is a huge, huge pathway to allow the limitless divine in to work through us. I say in, but it's already in us. It's already in us, but it helps clear the way for the divine flow to flow through us. So, for instance, I allow the riches of heaven to now manifest in my life in infinite ways beyond my human understanding or effort. Limitlessness there, absolutely. I allow the perfect job to find me beyond my human understanding or effort. It doesn't mean we don't have anything to do or we won't get inspired action, but it allows the inspired action to come through us if we need to take it. If we need to take it. So, beyond my human understanding or effort is a huge way to step into the limitlessness, to get past the thinking mind that has to, understand, control, and force. But it allows the energies to serve us, and that is what we are stepping into right now. We are stepping into an energy of home, an energy that will never turn against us. I want us to breathe and think into that right now. What would it be like to be in an energy that never turns against us? Because right now, my dear brothers and sisters, we are always in an energy that turns against us in every little single way. We enjoy, our food, and what happens? We gain weight. That's a turning against us. I'm trying to think of, there's so many examples. We grow our own food on the deck and we try to do these wonderful things and the animals come eat it. I mean, that's a simple thing of turning against us. We try to do something nice for someone and it backfires and it turns against us. We try to teach people something and they don't get it and it becomes a burden to us and it turns against us. I could point out so many. In infinite ways, the energy turns against us. So just imagine for a moment being in an energy that doesn't turn against us. And perhaps you can't. Perhaps you can't. That is where we are going. That is what is being offered to us. That is what we are stepping into. A limitless energy that serves our magnificence, that never turns against us, that can change time and space and physics to accommodate our magnificence if we just let things happen beyond our human understanding and effort. Because when we are pure channels for the divine to flow through us, things happen that make no earthly sense. And that is stepping away from the prison. That is claiming our freedom for ourselves. We can only do it for ourselves. And that sounds perhaps selfish, but it is the most selfless thing to claim your freedom for yourself and no others can claim it for themselves without our help. It kind of goes against everything I have been about my whole life. I've always been about making people more comfortable and uplifting them and inspiring them, and being told that I'm not allowed to do that anymore because that will not make me free has been a huge identity loss, but then a huge also liberation, a huge liberation, absolutely huge. So the takeaway with all of this, because I covered a whole bunch of things, is to not fight for our limits, and don't try and drag anyone on your path because they have their own paths and their own divinities that are waking them up. And yes, we can share our stories. And in fact, I think most of the stories we will hear in the coming years will be stories of how people woke up on their own path. And any little spark that we share, it can help other people with their own spark, but that doesn't mean we're dragging them on their path. It's just allowing our own spark to spark them in a way that doesn't involve responsibility, burden, or obligation. And then to really do whatever we can to change the mind. The mind, our intentions are what changes physics. We cannot force anything to change on the physical. Um, if we're trying to force even a fertility, I'm always talking about fertility, but that's where my attention is. If we're trying to force a fertility treatment, we can't force it unless we change it here. Spirit, I will not take one more step unless I know it is a spirit-led step. We have to change this first. This is what has to change first before anything can change on the physical. This, we listen with our hearts, we change our minds and allow our heart to lead our mind. And that is what changes the physics. That's what changes the reality. This is what makes the pathway for what is true and what is new to come through us. So changing our mind, uplifting our thoughts as much as we can, not fighting for the limitations, put them down. I now put down the limitations, and I accept my limitlessness beyond my understanding and effort, my human understanding and effort. Just embrace that, embrace that. So we truly are becoming blank slates. We are shedding any identity, and what is left is what everyone's talked about in the spiritual world, the I am. And that is why my language is different now. I don't talk about the Divine Mother as much in my conversations or my emails or my teachings, because what does the Divine Mother say? She says, I am. I am. That's what she says. And all is well. I am, and all is well. That is what she says. And from that place of being able to lay that divinity on everything, just try that. I'm gonna end with this. Try that. The divine in us simply says, I am, or I am that I am, if you like. I am that I am, all is well. I've talked about this before. This is the words of the divinity in us. Lay that like a blanket on anything that's presenting itself without trying to change it, and see just how putting that focus of the I am presence on whatever's presenting itself and letting it be as it is changes it without you even needing it to be changed. I talked about this last week, but give it just a little experience. Just say, I am. I exist, all is well. Blanket that on everything and see if that just makes any openings beyond your human understanding and effort. So I know this was different, but this is just the stream of consciousness I am right now. I don't know where I'm going to settle, but this is what's being freed from me right now. What's being freed this month of August has been a huge month of expansion, but especially of clearing, and where it's going to settle, nobody knows, but may it be somewhere beautiful beyond our human understanding, our effort. Thank you for joining me today. I will continue to share what I am getting as I am getting it. And if you have had any sparks or realizations or clearings, I would like to know what it is. So if you want to share those in the comments, then please do. I will pass around the offering plate right now and thank you for any donations and ask that whatever you donate, may it be multiplied 1,000-fold beyond our human understanding and effort. I love you, and I honor the divinity in you that is so, so strong and is leading you to freedom.